Okay, it's giving me a warning here.
It gave me my notification.
All right.
There's always, I think I say this every time, there's always this weird like 3 to 10 to 15-second delay where I don't know if we're actually live.
Yeah.
But it says we're live, but I don't see it on Facebook yet, and I feel like I'm stuck in the matrix, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. So we're good now, though.
Okay.
Excellent. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Parents Helping Parents Live. It's another wonderful Monday, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's been a really great break from the 115 and 120 degree weather that we've been having. It's been like in the 80s, which has been beautiful. Had a little bit of rain. So hopefully everybody's experiencing the same thing where you're at. So if you're not familiar with Parents Helping Parents, maybe you're catching this on YouTube, maybe you're seeing it because a friend shared it on their feed. Parents Helping Parents is a Oklahoma City-based nonprofit organization created by parents for parents with the purpose of sharing experiences, connecting people with resources, and providing education for any parent who has a young person that is struggling with a substance use disorder. I say a young person. I should say a child that's struggling with a substance use disorder, because lots of our parents do have young people, high school, college age students that are struggling with substance use disorders, but we have lots of parents who have adult children well under their 40s and 50s who are still struggling, that they're still trying to get help for, and still trying to get help for themselves with their own codependency and their own family dynamics. So if you've got a child any age and they're hurting, you're in the right spot. That's what Parents Helping Parents is for. And so we do these live streams as a way to get information and get education out to a little bit broader audience. And it also allows us to do things a little bit different. We host active support groups for parents, and those support groups are more specifically about addiction and more specifically about how to manage codependency and what to do with the actual disease of addiction piece. But these live streams allow us to get kind of broad and bring topics that we find are definitely useful for families, but maybe not specifically related to addiction. And I think that our topic tonight is one of those areas that has broad application for lots of families, but definitely has application for families who might be going through addiction and mental health related issues as well. So I'm really excited about it. I'm going to do this one other time, but real quick, what I want everybody that's watching live on Facebook to do is reach up, click the share button, share this live stream to your feed. People ask us all the time, what are ways that they can support our organization? You can always give money. We'll take it and we will put it to good use. But sharing our content on your Facebook page, on your Instagram page, on your Twitter page is free. And it is actually really beneficial for us as an organization to help spread the message of hope that we've got. Let's say you've got 500 people that you're Facebook friends with. Probably a third of those people know someone who's struggling with a substance use disorder. Sharing this video on your feed actually could save a life. It could mean that somebody sees a message about how to get help, or a message about getting hope and getting out of addiction that they wouldn't normally see. So share this, that would be great. As you're watching, if you're wanting to interact, if you've got questions for either me or for Julie, who's going to be our speaker, there's two ways you can ask those questions. One of those is through the comments section live on the Facebook feed. I'm monitoring that. I'll be taking care of that as we go. I'm actually going to be posting some links to Julie's professional Facebook page and website, and some other things in there as well for you to check out. So feel free to ask questions and comment in that. But remember, that's on the internet, and the internet will always be. So if you ask a question on there, if you comment on there, know that we can't really take that down without removing the entire video. So if you're concerned about your anonymity, if you want to protect your privacy, in the title of this video on Facebook, there is a private text line. Those text messages go directly to a Google number that we have set up just for Parents Helping Parents live streams. I read them, we answer the questions, I delete them. You don't have to attach a name to it. I don't save anybody's phone number. So it's a great way to ask questions in a more private and anonymous way. I think that might be it. If you want more information about Parents Helping Parents, where we host our support groups and all the wonderful things that we're up to, you can go check out our Facebook page at Parents Helping Parents Inc. You can also check us out on the website, www.parentshelpingparents.info. here's my second reminder: share the story, share the video to your feed. It really does make a difference. I'm actually going to do it while I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not willing to do. Boom, just share it on my page. If you want to verify that, you can go check it out. So let me unpin myself. I'll bring Miss Julie into the frame here so that everybody can see her bright, shiny face and pretty outfit there. And then, Julie is professional as they get. Sent me a bio, telling me all about herself. So I'm gonna read through a couple of things on her bio, and then I'm actually gonna let Julie introduce a little bit more about herself. And we're gonna kind of dialogue our way through some really interesting stuff here. So Julie, you're gonna have to help me. Is it Reising?
Rising.
Rising. That's what I thought. I should have just guessed. So Julie Reising is a licensed marriage and family therapist and an Oklahoma approved licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor. She's a registered play therapist and a play therapist supervisor, an AAMFT approved supervisor candidate, and a mindset and empowerment life coach. Now, for people that don't know anything, that means that she is immensely qualified to be talking to and working with families, which is why we asked her to be here. So let's see, having practiced in family therapy and play therapy fields for over 2 decades, Julie embraces the therapeutic process and play therapy with clients of all ages. Her integrated approach to helping clients live their best lives can be summed up in her tagline words: compassion, hope, transformation. Nothing better for people who are in active addiction than those 3 things. Or really, and me and Julie were talking about how we like to chase rabbits and go off on tangents. Here's one of them. If you're a family who has a family member that's struggling with an addiction, I don't think that there's anything better than offering compassion, finding some hope, doing your own transformational work to get healthy. Best ways to help somebody else in your family. So Julie embraces a lifelong learner approach to her work and continually nurtures and hones her skills to provide the best experience possible to clients and supervisees alike. Julie has served on the board of Oklahoma Association of Marriage and Family Therapy and currently serves as president-elect of the Oklahoma branch of Association of Play Therapy. Julie holds an adjunct faculty position in marriage and family therapy graduate program at Oklahoma Baptist University and is a life coach for Yay Dude OKC, which I don't know anything about. You'll have to educate me, Julie.
Okay.
Julie is an empty nester. Congratulations. Who has been married to the love of her life for just about forever and has 2 young adult children she adores. When she's not working, you can find Julie embracing her own brand of amazing traveling, running marathons, which I see a lot of on Facebook. You put in the work all the time, fishing or playing with her beloved granddaughter. You're also traveling. I just saw pictures of you on Facebook on the beach somewhere. I think maybe Hawaii or something, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So Julie, welcome. Thanks for being here. In addition to all of those wonderful things, just tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I just love the opportunities to get invited to talk about something that I'm so passionate about, play and playfulness, and how play can help people heal and live their best life. I just really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you for having me. I think this is such an important service. Getting people connected with resources and education, and you never know what little thing for any of us, when we listen or watch or engage in a conversation, we just never know what little thing is going to help us shift in a way that is going to change, how we're doing our life and affecting our own situation. So thank you so much for letting me be here. I think my bio says enough about me, but maybe what it doesn't capture quite as well is that I always say I'm very serious about play. So play to me is serious business, and there's lots of reasons why. And so I have been careful to curate my life in a way that it is infused with play and playfulness, because I've seen firsthand how it can transform, how it can support relationships, and just how much more fun it makes life when we have a playful approach to life. So I'm just glad to be here.
What I love more than anything is when I get to visit with people and you can feel the passion that they have for their area of study or their area of expertise. just coming through the computer screen. And that's what I get from you, just that you love this work so much. So
Yeah.
appreciate the time. I had sent you kind of some prep questions, not really prep questions, but just kind of ideas I had of like, hey, here are some questions that I want to talk about. And I actually added one right off the top that I thought might be important for us to bring, which I know that you're going to be able to answer just fine. But
Sure.
I thought before we got into play and to family and to all those dynamics, maybe it would be helpful to hear from you for a minute or two about family as a system. I think a lot of families don't quite understand that concept of, hey, I don't have a family member that has a problem. I've got a family that's got a problem. And I think that that's probably important foundational work to maybe what we'll talk about later, especially for our families that are always hearing us say that that addiction is a family disease.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
plays on that. So just kind of like briefly explain what that means, that we look at families as a system of people versus individuals of people.
Oh, yeah, and that's such a good point, because it is. So I like to, when I talk with clients about the fact that I am a family therapist, one of the things that we do, that we study, is we study families as a system. And what we're talking about there is the interconnectedness. And so I liken it to, like, I like to mix my metaphors. So sometimes I say, like, we don't exist on an island all by ourselves, right? We're living in a community, and that community that can be our immediate family members that live physically in our home, that can be other people that we're connected to, right? So we have these systems within systems. And so you're absolutely right. When we talk about any kind of issue that anyone within a family is struggling with, it's not just that person who's struggling. It's going to have effects especially, and most impactful, to the people that they're connected to. And so then I switch my metaphor to like being like a quilt, like we're kind of a patchwork quilt type of thing. And so we have our edges are connected to other people or other pieces of the quilt. And that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
I love the quilt metaphor, because to me, what I thought about is if one section of that quilt maybe has a hole in it or has a tear in it, like obviously that section is damaged, but it's going to impede how warm the whole quilt helps keep
Yeah.
you, right? And that idea that one
That's good.
one damaged square is actually encompassing. But I also love the idea of the first metaphor and the idea of community and fictive kin. And sometimes family isn't really just people we're related to by blood, but they're people that we do life with and we do community with.
Right, absolutely. And just in really thinking about that connectedness, and that, of course, then it makes sense, right? That's why family, therapy makes sense. That's why it makes sense, and not nothing against doing individual therapy, because that has a place in all of this as well. But we do have to understand that even if, as a therapist, even if I am treating a person, they are connected to others, or the person that that I am working with, they're connected, and how those connections are impacting them, and how they are impacting their system. And that's a huge thing to take a look at. And I could talk all day, and I will not, about systems, but like, certainly when we're talking about, so we're talking to parents tonight, right? So we're talking to parents, and so parents are part of the family system, and they have children, and so there's these impacts of like different, like, power, like who has more power in the situation, or what power do we have as a parent? Like, that's something that I often work with parents on. What power do they have really in their family? Sometimes we think parents are really powerful, but yet parents often don't feel very powerful.
Mhm.
There can be even like that, just that kind of disconnect in a family system, that we can, that we need to work to find a little more balance, or be able to let go of things that we can't actually have control of. We would like to, as
Yeah.
parents. And that changes, right, depending on the age of the child. You talked about, so when my child is 2 years old, I have a lot of control over a lot of things in their world, right? And then as they get older, we have less and less control or
Mm.
power as a parent. of their world, right? They're exposed to so much more. So their system changes, doesn't it? Like it
Yeah.
kind of starts out just being whoever their parents, put them in contact with. But then as they get older and they go through those developmental stages, then that system gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. This is completely off topic, but I just want to pick your brain
Well,
now.
that didn't take us long.
Yeah, no, it's not going to take us long at all. You were talking about as children age and find independence and all of these things, that they become exposed to a bigger world and their systems change. You've been doing this quite a while. I think in your bio it said 2 decades, right? So
Yeah.
have you noticed a shift in how fast that's happening for our young people, just because of the changes in technology and cell phones and those type things? Or has it not been quite as noticeable as maybe we think it would?
Um, well, I do see, I think it's kind of a little bit of both. And I think it's always been there, but I do think that because we do have access to more information and more influence, outside influence, like I think that does look a little bit different. I don't know. Does it happen faster? Maybe so. I think, and I'm not here to like hate on anybody's smartphone. I love my smartphone. I love, like social media. I mean, we're on social media right now using it for a really great reason, right? Opportunity. It's an amazing platform, and right. And there are those things that our children now are having to work with. And so one of the things that I've seen is an increase in anxiety in children that I know just wasn't there 20 years ago, at least not with the prevalence that it is now. And I think of anxiety as being kind of contagious. So if you grow up with really anxious, like anxious adults around you, it's likely that you might kind of end up feeling kind of anxious or, as a child, but also because we do have so much more exposure to so many more things. And so I think that's where sometimes that anxiety can come from. And I have noticed in like the last few years, how much more prevalent anxiety is with, for kids.
Yeah.
And they talk about it like they did, like we didn't even name anxiety a lot of times. Like people would come to counseling, 20 years ago, and they didn't know that that's what that was. They didn't know anxiety. And now, I mean, we have, even clients are different that do come to therapy because they often have a lot more information and knowledge about what's going on for them than a client 20 years ago did.
Yeah.
So.
I loved your emphasis on using the word "and" very intentionally, because I love to do that even in my own life. We get so used to using the word "but" that's very exclusive and almost doesn't feel healthy. But when we say "and," it's, I don't know. I think about like a family who's saying, the difference between "we love you, but we have to set a healthy boundary with you," and a family that says "we love you and we have to set a healthy boundary with you," and how much more healthy it sounds to do things that way.
Right. Well, yeah. So I think at the end, so that comes from my work as a recovering perfectionist. So I try to keep a good secret that I am human, but I really am. And so I make mistakes and everything, but that perfectionism says like, kind of like either you're so awesome or you're terrible, right? Like there's a lot of or, and I think but often is an or it's choosing one thing. It's very, there's a lot of what's the word, dichotomy there, I guess. And so for me, the "and" is very connecting, and it helps me keep in mind the wholeness of the experience. So yes, we love you, and we're going to choose to set a boundary.
Yeah.
Like that could be an "and." Those two things do go together. Boundaries and love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Together,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do think that's a newsflash for some people. Like, I do think that's because I hear a lot, like boundaries are mean, I don't want to be mean. I don't want, and I'm sure you hear that too, right? And so I think it's important to remember that things like love and boundaries do actually go together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. So we're here to talk about play finally.
Oh, yes. Back on
I
top.
know this may seem like a really basic question, and maybe even some people that are listening might say that it's kind of a silly question, but I don't think it really is. To start, Julie, why don't you tell us what is play, as we keep calling it, and why is it vital both to building foundational stuff in a relationship and maintaining relationships?
Okay. Oh yeah. So I'm so glad you asked. So yeah. So play really at its core is just essentially engaging in an activity or an interaction that has no other purpose than pleasure, than joy. It is the means to the end. It's not the end, right? Like there isn't like this other goal. So when we're playful, the goal is simply to be playful. It doesn't have some other, like, I hear a lot of people, they're like, well, I do this for fun. And I'm like, but is it really fun? Because they still need that goal, right? Like we're very, we kind of love our work ethic and we love to feel productive. I think especially as parents, or as adults, right? Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so when we think about play, and there's a lot of research that goes into it, but yeah, so play is necessary really for our mental and emotional health and our, and even our physical health. Like we're designed, believe it or not, as playful creatures. Like that's really like kind of how we're oriented to the world. And if you watch young children, like they are masters of play, aren't they? They can turn anything into a game. They will utilize any like not even a toy. It doesn't even have to be a toy. It just can be a utensil or whatever, and they will create.
I played with a lot of sticks.
Okay, yeah, like a stick. Like I think it's the perfect example. A stick can be a magic wand. A stick can be a gun. A stick can be an arrow. A stick can be a spear. A stick can be, it can be just this endless possibility. I mean, and children will, if all they have available to them is a stick, they will use a stick and they will be playful with it, right?
Yeah.
That to me is like kind of that's their superpower is, young kids, I think. And but when we think about play in terms of our system or in terms of our relationship, it's an integral part of how we connect to people. I mean, there's a reason that Sad Cat Diaries, makes me laugh until I cry, right? Like there's some element of playfulness in it, right? Like satire and things like that. But when we're interacting with someone in a playful way, we are building relationship, we are supporting relationship, we are enhancing relationship, and we are creating healing. So one example that I often give of that is if anybody has ever known, I've just grown up around a lot of nurses. And if they, we talk about like ER humor, like kind of like nurses have they can have a very interesting sense of humor.
It's a little bit like therapist humor. It gets a little dark.
Yeah, it gets a little dark, right? Oh yeah, and I follow an Instagrammer who is a therapist who like does psychotherapy memes as her thing, and it's like her memes are hilarious, but yeah, it's like kind of just poking fun at what can be, a hard thing, and having, and being playful around that, and being, and finding that. And I just think that so yeah, so it's a way of connecting us, and it also creates a buffer between us and whatever hard life circumstance we might be going through.
Yeah,
because sometimes life is hard, no doubt about that.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about how play can help heal?
Yeah, I can. So certainly, I mean, so I could talk about play therapy, right? Like that. So play therapy is a process. So play is the process. And I shared a video introducing Andrew that if you'll share that with the audience, it's a great explanation. It's a cute little short video. it's a great explanation of why play is appropriate for children, in terms of therapeutically. But the reality is that we utilize play therapy across the lifespan, because it is so for children specifically, it is how they process whatever's happening to them, trauma, illness, all the things that can happen to them. So play is like their natural language. And so it really makes sense, certainly for children. And I think more and more people are understanding that. But I think it can feel odd to parents when they bring their child to therapy and their child's actually excited to come in Miss Julie's playroom. And they're like, but are you just playing? And so part of that education piece that we do as play therapists is helping parents understand that the play is the process, and it parallels, just like with an adult, they might come to talk therapy, right? They might come to therapy and talk, or they might go to an EMDR therapist or different kinds of therapists that are using different interventions, right, to help them heal. And not all of them are talk based. They're not, and so play is just one of those options. And so it gives us the opportunity. So for me, when I think about utilizing play, like in a family or even with adults, is it helps us get out of our head and into our heart space. So it helps us get, which is sometimes why adults resist it a little bit, right? Because it doesn't feel sometimes it feels really comfortable and in control to be able to just talk about what's going on. But sometimes it's a more powerful transformation to utilize a different kind of intervention. And play can be one of those, and there's others too, right? Expressive arts, things like that.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, like, for teenagers, so again, speaking about therapy, like for teenagers, I don't know how many teenagers have sat in my office feeling relieved that I am not going to squeeze them like a tube of toothpaste and make them talk to me. So I've had a lot of that, like, I don't want to talk. I don't, my parents say I have to talk to you. And I'm like, well, we're going to interact, but we don't necessarily have to talk. And that's like a relief, I think, for a lot of teenagers, and so I use play with teenagers.
You were talking about how play at a certain developmental level helps people understand their own emotional experiences and their own cognitive experiences in a way that's different and more appropriate to where somebody's at developmentally. This may or may not be true, but this is what I thought about. There's a lot of research, a lot of great research that suggests that whether it's both chronic drug and alcohol use, especially from an early age, somebody that started using at 12, 13, 14, is actually going to emotionally delay development as long as somebody's using heavily. And we know that trauma has the same impact a lot of times, is that with certain areas of our brain, it will delay us. Is that one reason, one explanation for why play could even be useful for somebody maybe that's in early recovery, but they're 25, but developmentally, they've never worked through some of those emotional milestones that they should have because of their use or because of a trauma experience?
Oh, that's such a great point, because yes, like trauma and yes, absolutely. So you're absolutely right that those things, so we can be, so we can be our chronological age, but we can also be a different developmental age or stage. And certainly trauma and substance use can, illness as well. Illness can impact that as well. Lots of different things that can happen to a person can certainly kind of get them kind of stuck in a particular stage. And so you're absolutely right, this opportunity. And I will tell you, I don't, like tweens, like they're such a special group of kids, right? Like, and so they're, they kind of have one foot in childhood and then one foot into kind of this like teenager stage, and they're kind of in between. And in play, in a playroom, when they have the opportunity to play, most of the time they will play. So 10, 11, 12, even, and on up, they will engage in a playful intervention so much more willingly and naturally, very naturally.
Yeah.
Because it's not like we're, saying like you will play or else, right? Like it's just not a hard, I always say it's just not a hard sell.
Yeah.
Like what kid, they're going to come to my office and they see I have, Beanie Babies and, toys and sand and all this and, drawing paper and paints and bubbles. And they're like, okay, yeah, this is all right.
Yeah.
Right?
Sounds wonderful to me.
Yeah. And I do see adults will like kind of, reach over and grab something to even just like to have I call it a fidget toy, just to sometimes have a fidget toy. Things like that. Like that's also helpful to the therapeutic process. Even if you're utilizing some talk therapy, like having something playful, something for your body to do is often helpful.
Yeah. The other thing I thought about as you were talking, and I don't know what it was you said to me. Oh, I think it's when you said that play gets us out of our heads and gets us into our hearts. My undergraduate degree was actually in business, and I can remember a guy coming through and doing a lecture about like kind of cutting edge interview techniques. And he said that his company, especially for executive positions and upper level leadership positions, that once they did kind of that first filter out interview and they had 4 or 5 candidates that they were interested in, they would take all of those candidates and their current staff like paintballing or do something like that, because they were like, people don't realize that all of their strengths and character defects come out a lot faster when you're doing something like that than it would in like a structured interview process. And they had a ton of success with that strategy.
Oh, I can absolutely, I can see that. So as a therapist, if I'm trying to get to know a family, I kind of have a choice. Now, for the most part, just kind of generally, kids don't want to talk. Parents do want to talk, right? Like that kind of, even sometimes parents have a hard time. Like they're just not, think they're not comfortable or whatever, but we can get to know each other very beautifully, very naturally, and with a lot less, I think, anxiety or angst through playing a game. Because what do games do? They provide some structure. They provide like we have some rule. We know what to do, right? Most of us, if we're presented with a game, even if we don't know how to play that game, we understand how to play a game. And that provides some structure, and structure feels safe to us when we're feeling emotionally vulnerable. And I can get to know a lot about a family with how they interact in any number of games that I play with them. And that's me getting to know their system and what's going on for them in a way that we don't have to blame anyone. We started out this whole conversation talking about the system and that it's not an individual who has a problem. It's the family that, right, is struggling with something, right? Like that's a family issue. And so we can have, we can get to know each other through playing games without having to point the finger at one person as being
So I know that there are families listening that are thinking this, and I can almost hear some of the families I've worked with in the past, like voices in my head a little bit. And what they're saying is something like, you don't know what our family's having to go through right now. You can't imagine how bad it's been for so long. And I know that these families that are struggling either with addiction or traumatic experiences, there's like this haze of darkness that just kind of shrouds over the whole family. When families are in situations like that, when they're going through it, when it's been bad for a long time, what are some realistic ways that they can still engage in play, even though it doesn't feel like family time doesn't feel very good because it's always chaotic and there's always conflict? And how can they begin to introduce some of these things that we know they need, even when it feels like they don't have a way to do it?
Okay. Yeah. And I want to be really respectful of that. I don't, this is not this is not toxic positivity. This is not
Mm,
being a
yeah.
jokester, right? Like playfulness is not like always being the punchline or being the joke, the jokester or something, right? So playfulness can be an attitude that we bring to a conversation. It can be when I think about, in often these families are probably have older kids, so it may not be as clear cut. So when a kiddo's younger, right, you grab the Legos and you sit on the floor and you play Legos. And although I do know a number of adults who love Legos, so that might still
Yeah.
apply. It might be a great connection activity to have a Lego set, like that might be a really awesome thing. I mean, and you do you, like whatever that is, whatever that moment of connection. But if we think about play, the purpose of play in a family, right, is to support those relationships. So it's, to me, if you're going through it, it's even more important that you find these moments of playfulness, and they can be very spontaneous. But I would say probably in those cases, the parents will have to be intentional.
Mm,
So not that, and I just want to be clear about that, because, play, we can also get this idea in our culture, I think, especially, is that we have to spend a lot of money. It has to be something that's highly scheduled. And in fact, I think sometimes those can be the things that actually take away from the play,
mm,
the playfulness, right? Because it could add stress or whatever. But, playfulness can be having a popcorn fight.
mm.
Popcorn is doesn't really like I've used a lot of popcorn in my office, and I never damaged any person or anything with popcorn, right? And if you don't want popcorn all over your living room, you could go outside and have a popcorn fight, right? You could do that. I mean, you can, so it's really kind of thinking about like taking advantage of those moments um to maybe take a break from the heaviness. Maybe give yourself permission. I often do this with people who are grieving.
Mm,
It's okay to take a break from the grief. The grief will be there when you get back. You're
yeah.
going to take a little break, and maybe you're going to laugh, or you're going to sit with your friend and, and have good time and laugh at some jokes or something. The grief will be there. It's probably not going anywhere while you take a little break, and I think giving ourselves permission to take those breaks can be really really powerful and really impactful to the relationship. So so doing things like I'm trying to think, I did write a couple of things down. What is it? Like making fun of a song that you both dislike.
Mm,
Like, I think that can be like a bonding moment with a teenager for sure, right? Like you're both like, oh, this is a terrible,
yeah.
this is why I don't like it, right? Like we can be playful about that. We can make, we can make up funny lyrics to a song we don't like or a song we do like. We can, we can do things like just come, in music. I mean, that's a whole other realm of wellness, right? Things that are good for our emotional health, music, right?
Yeah.
Creativity, art, that kind of thing.
Yeah. You're kind of, I think, naturally taking us into my next question, which is like, how does play look different through different stages of the lifespan, right?
Yeah.
Like, how might play look different for families? Like, well, we've got some grandchildren, but like, I think, me and my brother and my parents are all doing something. Like, how might playfulness look different for us than it might look if we had his 12-year-old daughter, with us, or my kids with us?
Yeah, well, so one of my favorite things is to observe families when they're kind of out and about, and how sometimes having a kid gives adults the kind of the opportunity or the excuse to be playful. Have you ever seen adults like grab the Nerf gun from the 12-year-olds, and they, they're like, oh, these are really awesome, right? And they, because probably as adults they're not having a Nerf gun fight necessarily, right? But we can still apply those same things. We can, so it might look different. So my friends and I got together in June. What were we doing? I don't know. We were going to go do something. And so we did the TikTok challenge, the tortilla slap challenge. Have you done that?
Well, I just did it for the first time last week with my 15-year-old. It was a blast.
Okay. Okay. So this is like, I think the youngest of in our group was in their like mid-40s on up. Like, and we did the tortillas and we recorded ourselves doing it.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
and
great.
posted it on social media. So I mean,
That's not a video that you sent to me to share in our Facebook.
I could. It's been all over social media. Yeah. Like, I mean, like, yeah, we're slapping each other with a tortilla. So,
That's great.
so again, but we might not have just done that if our friend hadn't kind of masterminded that, right? Like she spearheaded that effort. She made sure she had tortillas and she's like, hey, guess what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And of course not, we didn't force anybody to participate, but it was fun. And you could see us like kind of warming to the fun and the spontaneity of the moment. But again, so that's what I mean by intention, is that we may have to be, especially as adults, because it's just easier to be serious and be a drag as an adult. Like it just is. And we know that, parents in particular carry a heavy, heavy load nowadays. They can have all kinds of stressors. And so it really is about like giving yourself permission to take a break from all of that and just be playful. My 81-year-old dad keeps bubbles, like bubbles with the big bubble wand around. And he's pretty open about the fact that they're not for the great grandchildren, although the great grandchildren use them. He'll sit in his backyard and blow bubbles.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of playfulness. And that's just connection to himself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's sometimes doing that all by himself.
What I start to think about them when we talk about this is that idea that there's so much to life that we oftentimes skip over because we're routine and we're scheduled, and we think so much that life is about, career and housework and these things, and we don't really stop to appreciate that there's beauty in a bubble or a park and some of the things that we just lose because life tends to be toilsome at times. But we never stop to appreciate the untoilsome parts of life long enough to let it really just kind of sink in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what and so when I say play is healing, like certainly there is this therapeutic part that I say, if you're going to bring anyone under the age of 18 to therapy, I would encourage you to consider play therapy, because play therapy is actually this big umbrella, and there's lots of different models of play therapy. So there's synergetic play therapy, and there's Adlerian play therapy, and there's CBT play therapy, and there's all of these different ways. So you're going to find a vast variety of therapists that do play therapy, that are either registered play therapists like I am, or have studied and utilize play therapy as part of their, toolkit, so to speak. And so you can do that, but also let's not minimize how healing play is just in our everyday. That when we take that moment and we walk race. So one of the things my husband and I do sometimes is like we walk race to the car to see who can get there first, but you have to walk, but you have to race, and you have to see who touches the car. And there's no prize or anything, and we are in our 50s, but we're doing that kind of like we can, like we feel like one of the things that we do is that we infuse playfulness into whatever we're doing. And that's I think to me, that's kind of the secret sauce. And that can be, really healing. I mean, have you ever not had fun having a water balloon fight, or like tossing water balloons? I mean, that's just fun, right? Like, and even if you just decide you don't want to toss them at each other, but you toss them at a target, like you use like you do it cooperatively. Because not everything has to be a competition, right? I mean, we can do things cooperatively, but we can be really playful doing it. I mean, you can have an awful lot of fun with some water, water balloons, bubbles, like sidewalk chalk. Pretty
I love the idea that it's more of intentional mentality
Yeah.
that I try to carry with me and infuse. Like you could experience a lot of playfulness grocery shopping.
Nice.
If you look for funny puns on the boxes, and
Right.
and just doing those things just brings so much more kind of light and upbeatness to everything. So
Yeah. And I guess that's where I think that for parents, I think you're right. I think there's almost a feeling that we're not supposed to be playful as like
yeah,
parenting is serious business, right? And we can get to a place where we feel like it's not appropriate, or because we do have these stressors, it's easy to lose perspective or not feel very playful, right? I mean, I think
yeah,
that's a piece of it too, right? When I'm stressed out. However, what I notice for myself, and I will speak for myself, is that if I can either kind of choose to kind of focus on that stress, or when I allow myself, and that's how I think of it, right? If I allow myself the freedom to be able to
hmm,
be playful, then somehow that stress just doesn't seem quite as stressful, or I feel better. Maybe I just feel better equipped to handle it. Maybe that's a
yeah,
better way of saying it,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Julie, I ask everybody that comes on if you had like a 30-second message of hope for a family or an individual that might be watching this, that might be going through some things that are challenging or difficult for them, what would your kind of seam line message of hope and encouragement be to them?
That healing is possible, that
Mm,
transformation and healing is possible. It's available. I know the lie to me, the lie that trauma tells us is, if you knew my story, you'd understand that I can't change. I can't be different. And I think that, like I'm too bad, or my situation is
yeah,
too bad, right? And I think that's a lie. I think depression tells us that lie. I think anxiety does. I think trauma does. And what I would say is there is hope is available, healing is available. It's going to
yeah,
look a little bit different for each person, but absolutely healing is available.
yeah. Man, that's great. Thank you so much. Hey, for people that are watching the video that want to get in touch with Julie, that maybe have questions for her or are interested in maybe seeking her out for some of her play therapy or coaching services, I have added Julie's website and professional Facebook page to the comment section of the video. So feel free to look at those for all of her contact information. Julie, man, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun, no pun intended.
It is.
Just visiting.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really good to see you. I haven't
Yeah,
seen you in a really long time. So it was,
it's been too long. I agree.
yeah.
I agree. So
I kind of stalk
hey,
you, cyber stalk you a little bit on like I
that's
see
all
what
right.
you're up to, and I know that you're
Yeah,
doing lots of really great things, but it was really nice to connect with you
yeah,
just a little
yeah.
bit.
I agree 100%. Hey, thank you for your time. For people
Sure.
that joined us, thank you for being here. Lots of
Yeah.
different things you could be doing on a Monday, but you spend it with us. So
Yeah.
we'll be back in another 2 weeks with a live stream. Everybody, have a happy Monday. Enjoy the cool weather.
All right.